Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop, and we're about to embark on a project working on a mandolin. The plan is that this will be the last video I will make on building and repairing musical instruments. In this case it is a repair or a setup or a little bit of a combination of both. And here it is, it's a Leonora mandolin. This is, quite honestly, after all the work has been done. It turns out that I lost some video footage on the start of this project, so we will pick up the video footage after the fretboard has been removed. This mandolin came in for a setup and to have this crack repaired in the back. The problem was that I couldn't really set it up the way it was because the neck angle was wrong. That's all I'm going to tell you right now. We'll get into the rest of the video right after this. In terms of videoing this job, I haven't been doing a very good job of that. But I just used my heater. I heated this up really hot. I slid this under there and it popped it off with zero tear out. It just really did a nice job. What I was hoping is that this joint would loosen up too while I was doing that, because I let it get really hot. And doesn't look like it, not so much anyway, although I do see some movement, but I don't think it's going to come out of there, so we'll have to work on that and break that joint. I've got my rig set up to steam it off, and my rig consists of a tea kettle there and a hot plate. Now this hot plate only gets so hot. This outfit is something I made and put on here, and it pops off if the pressure gets too great, and it has popped off in the past, but it's also a good tight fit so that the steam is forced out this tube. That's also why I have it pointing away from me in case it would pop off, then it won't hit me. And I will put this little needle down in here, I hope, and steam this off. There's just enough room in this crack that I think I can get it down in there. There's a side hole on the little needle and an end hole both. So hopefully we're not blocking off the steam. That's why it popped off that one time, because I had it down in a very tight hole and the pressure built up and popped that off. Steam is nothing to mess with. You don't want to take any chances. You want to take all your precautions you can, because it will eat your lunch if you do something wrong. I'm watching the steam right now, and I'm listening to it kind of starting to boil a little bit in there, and I'm watching for it to start moving down this pipe. So far it hasn't done that. I'll show you what it looks like once we get some steam coming through the pipe. Well, it just started spurting out of there, so I just turned the camera on. It's blowing out more water than it should. Generally, I like to keep this higher so it doesn't blow out so much water. It just blows out more steam. But you can see there it's going to town. It's really blowing hard right now. Let's see if it did anything to loosen the joint. Yeah, I think it did, maybe. I get some movement out of it now. I was getting almost nothing out of it before. Yeah, it's wiggling. It's wiggling more as I go. I wonder if I could get this down in beside here. The trick of this is you don't really know what angle the joint is. You kind of think you do. Trying to rake some of the glue and fibers out of the way. Yeah, I think we're gonna get it. I think we're gonna get it. Yeah, we got it. With almost no destruction at all. So it worked out just fine. So I don't have to turn the water back on, and we have the neck out. We can move on to the next step. My friends, it's been several days since I've worked on this, maybe even several weeks. As you can tell, the neck is out of it, of course. Now my trick is, how do I reset this neck and get it at the right angle for this, especially since the old bridge has been cut down so far. I really don't know what standard is on a mandolin made like this. I think I'm just going to start a little bit at a time and clean these joints out, because the joints are full of old glue. And then we'll just kind of sneak up on it, try to figure out exactly how to do this the best way, the most efficient way. It's not that I haven't done a lot of neck resets, it's just that everyone's a little different, and this one's different because I've never messed with this particular brand of mandolin, and I'm not exactly sure how high this action ought to be here. As I talk about it also, I noticed that there's a light crack down through here, so it could be that this top is you know, a little loose or something. It looks like there's a crack. It may not be actually open. It's hard to tell. I'm moving around. It may be closed. It's really hard to say. It could just be that the finish has seeped into that crack. There appears to be a caul across the crack, so that part seems to be solid. Let me see if I can see in there and tell any more about it. Yeah, it looks reasonably solid all the way to the back. I'm not a big fan of this crease across here. What they do to make that crease is they cut away some of the wood on the inside, and then it folds on that line. And that's what they've done here. But it still seems to be solid. I'm looking at the braces and all that good stuff too. I want to know about all this stuff before we go to the trouble of resetting the neck, because if there's a problem in there, it could affect the neck angle quite a bit. Based on what I can see, it looks all right. And yeah, I have cameras that I can put inside, but those things leave a lot to be desired in my opinion also. Especially in tight places and trying to maneuver them around. It looks all right as far as I can tell. Might go to this little bit smaller chisel. I thought that second smallest chisel would be good enough, but I think I really need the smallest chisel. I am a pretty good fan of these two cherry chisels. I think I have a link to these on the products I use page of my website. Been pretty pleased with them. You know, they're an economical set. They hold an edge pretty well. Not hard to sharpen. Overall, pretty good chisels for the money. I mean, you could certainly spend a lot more money for higher end chisels, but these are pretty darn good. I'm not a fan of hide glue, and this old hide glue down in here, it has to go. Because when I put this back in here, I don't ever expect it to come out again. There's a deep pocket there, and it's just full of glue. So that's what I'm working on, trying to get this glue out of this deep pocket here. I would say there's a very good chance that this pocket is much deeper than this is, and that's okay. I prefer everything to fit up where all the glue actually works. In a deep pocket, the glue isn't really doing anything. You know, unless there's a close contact between the wood, the glue has no strength at all. So in other words, what I'm saying in just plain black and white English, glue cannot span any kind of a gap. If you have a gap, you're just wasting your time thinking you're going to be able to glue it and make it hold. Well, that's cleaned up quite a bit better, but I'm still not overly impressed. Let me see if I can scrape the glue off better with this. I'm trying to get the glue off without getting rid of wood.
An old battered case, weathered and...
All right, well that side's clean, about as good as we're gonna get it, I imagine. So let's see about this side and see if we can just scrape the glue off again without taking off the wood.
With the hinges all rusted and the fabric all torn, but still cradled inside was one of...
On this end, again, the glue indicates that it's not making good contact. There's just a big buildup of glue. That should at least let me get it back down in here now. You can see it goes in there pretty well. It's actually fairly tight. It's not bad. It's not a bad fit. I'm wondering how good we are on the angle. It's pretty flat. I've got about a 1/16 of an inch there, and that's not too bad. That might be enough because, you know, you're going to raise it all up by this thickness here, plus that 1/16 of an inch. So that's how tall your bridge is going to end up being pretty much. But I don't know. I'm still not totally convinced that's the right height. I'd feel better if it was just another, a little bit, maybe almost another 1/16. It's kind of rocking. When I look at this joint, it rocks a little bit. And I think if it's rocked all the way down, we're probably okay. I think I want to take this down just a hair more. Just going by experience and eye and all that. I don't have any particular measurements. I'm not going to cut this much. I mean, a very little bit will make a big difference. I'm only shaving off a few thousandths. I'm trying to feather it back so that this point, the heel, can be tighter down against the body. Just do a little bit at a time and make sure that the heel is tight against the body, and it's not much different than it was, I don't think. And we haven't changed anything yet. I think the problem is that it's rocking on the middle here a little bit. Let's see if that made any difference. Again, I'm taking off very minimal amount here, you understand. That looks a lot better. Does it measure better? Not much difference. Probably a couple thousandths better, but only a couple thousandths. It's not much. I think the heel itself, right on the heel, is probably where I'm having the most difficulty. I think I showed you this before, but this is the most unusual tuners I've ever seen. These thick buttons fill in this hole. I'm not sure how these tuners are installed. It appears to me that there's some sort of a little wedge clip right here that's been driven in to hold them in place. That's my guess. Actually, I think that is it because it's starting to lift out, I think. I don't know how they're made. I really never seen anything quite like these. I don't know that I want to get into that right now, but I'm curious as to how these are made. This is where I think I need to take it off. I think I need to take it off right on the heel itself to give myself just a little bit more room. And it's, again, we're talking minute amount. It'd be hard to measure how little I'm taking off here. I don't like these things falling out of there, but I keep putting them back because I'm afraid that something is going to fall out of there. Some of this metal stuff's going to fall out and I'll lose it. On this face, I hadn't really cleaned this face, and there's a little bit of something there. Got to be very careful here because I don't want to go outside of the varnish area. That might be part of my problem. There might be some of this holding it up just a little bit. Maybe that'll change it just a little bit more. I'm only looking for a tiny amount. I think I got it. I think that's it right there. In fact, that's maybe a hair more than I was expecting, but I think that's going to be okay. You know, I'm just going by experience, guys. I'm really not going by any particular thing, just pretty much eyeball, and that's it. I think that's going to work. Now, what I'm going to do after we put this on here like this is I'm going to drive a little wedge, maybe in between here, to fill in this crack just a little bit. I'm going to drive a little wedge down in there, I think. Get some paper thin wedges and drive them down in here to hold this neck at this angle so it can't pull back. So in other words, I'm going to drive them in right here in this crack, and they're going to be very thin. See, like that blade is thin blade, and it just barely starts down in there. So it won't be much, but I'm going to try to drive something in there to keep this neck angle at the angle I want it. So let me come up with some wooden wedges there that I can use. In case you're wondering how I would make a wedge like that, I go over to the sander, sand this strip of wood down really thin, and it's paper thin or even thinner than paper at the end here. What I'll do is now I'll split that down the middle and use one for each side of this, and it should work just fine. Okay, I've got the wedges made, got the glue ready to go. I'm going to get the glue painted on here really well.
Oh, precious thing, it was Grandpa's old fiddle, oh how sweetly it rings.
Once again, I always use a paintbrush. I feel like it does better than anything else as far as getting down into cracks, crevices, holes. You can use spreaders and things, but they don't always get everywhere, and they'll glaze over and leave an air pocket type thing. There's no air pockets left when you spread it with a brush. Thinking about putting a teeny bit of glue on this too, just before I drive it in, but
Grandpa's old fiddle played sweet melodies. He played it from his heart for my grandma and me. Wrinkled.
All right, I'm going to cut these off. I'll just use these cutters, cut these off first. To glue off my cutters here. And then I'm just going to make sure there's no glue seeping out anywhere. I think I'm going to test my idea here and see. It's a little higher than I was expecting, I got to be honest. I think maybe I'll just leave it go like that. We'll figure it out after it dries. I'm just going to let it sit like that for, overnight, and we'll take a look at it tomorrow. Well, my friends, due to more stuff, this has been sitting for a couple of weeks, so I think it's time to get back on it here. I'm shaving off these little shims that I stuck in here to tighten up this neck joint. These are just little tiny thin shims, and they don't amount to much, but they're just there to take up space, and that way the neck can't pull back into that space. That should hold that. It left a little tiny gap along here and a little tiny gap along here, which is, I was expecting that. and I'll fill that and stain that, so that's not a big deal. Looks like that's going to work really well, so I guess we'll get that glued on. A lot of old glue on here, so I like to have the surfaces clean. I will just scrape that off. This X-Acto knife can be a good scraper for something like this. They used the pin method for lining the neck. Unfortunately, that pin is so far down in there, it doesn't do anything. So if I can reach it, I'm going to pull it out and use it again. Oh, I think it pushed it down in there, if anything. Doggone it. Well, that's not a big deal.
Old hands, he held it with love, and I can still hear it playing up in heaven above.
There's good wood contact there now, but let's just make sure it still fits good. Feels real good. I think it'll be fine. Ain't nothing to it except to do it. Let's go ahead and get her done.
The most honest man that I ever have seen, and his time on this old earth was more.
I think what I'm going to do is kind of let that get a little tacky before I try to clamp it up. Okay, I've got a little pan of pretty hot water here, and I'm just going to rub down through here and clean off the extra glue. There's probably going to be some more glue squeeze out, so I'm not too terribly worried about it right now. Okay, I'm just going to use these clamps since they have pads on them already.
Was precious to me. He lived on Current River at the mouth of the springs, and at night the hills echoed as the old fiddle would ring. Grandpa's old fiddle played sweet.
Okay, everything looks solid. I don't think it's moving on me. I think we can let that set up overnight. I tell you, you got to be careful with these things. Without alignment pins, they like to slide. Yeah, and that one slid just a little tiny bit. I'm tempted to just start over because I know better than to try to do these things without these alignment pins. I know some people don't think you need them, but boy, I'll tell you what, when you get picky like I am, they'll move. These things will move on you just a little bit. It looks like it slid away. It has. It slid away from this nut. It slid just a little bit in different places. I think I'm just going to let it get a little more tacky here and then clamp it again. I pretty much know how these things go. I've done it enough times. Flat surfaces like to move. It's really hard to get them to clamp up and stay still. I'm probably going to go to a different clamp and try it again. Well, my friends, I'm trying to put more clamps on here, and you know what? It just keeps moving. Even after letting it set quite a while, it's still tacky and sliding. It just slides. That's why I say you pretty much got to have the pins on there. People, you say salt and all this. Look at how the glue's rolled up. I think that's a reaction to the old glue that was on there. There was so much hide glue in there. I'm going to wash this all down. Maybe I'll get rid of the hide glue by washing it down. And we're going to start over. What happens is, even up to maybe 30-40 minutes after you leave, this thing can still slightly slide a little bit. And they'll do it, boy. I mean, like, it's almost like it'll do it to spite you, you know? It's just aggravating. So I know better than to glue something like this that's trying to move and leave. Now, if it wasn't trying to move at all, if it was staying perfectly still, I'd be fine with it, but it's not. And I really do think there's so much hide glue on there that is embedded in the wood, and I can feel how sticky it is. I'm pretty sure that's the hide glue, because this water-soluble glue that I'm using, it doesn't get sticky like that. Maybe just washing it off will get rid of the hide glue better. And I'm going to put the little metal pins in there, and then I know it won't move. Having a little trouble washing off the wood glue because some of it has gotten, further along in the curing process. But it washes off. It's just like the hide glue. It'll come off. Just takes a little bit more elbow grease. I think I've got it clean down to bare wood on both parts. And I'll take a dry paper towel and dry both of them off. Yeah, I thought I'd try gluing it on there without the nails, but I tell you what, you can't trust them when you do that, huh? You can do it and get away with it. I'm happy for you, but I've never been able to get away with anything like that. It always comes back to bite me. We'll give that a couple minutes to dry a little bit more, air dry, and then I'm going to get the nails in there while it's drying, and I'll show you how that all works. Okay, my friends, what I do is I just take a little 1/2-inch brad like this. I'm not driving this in very far. I hold it in my hand so the shock is going into my hand. And drive it in, 1/8 inch, something like that. Come back here. Here's where they had their nail. They had it right dead center. I generally don't put them center, and the reason I don't is because it's mostly because of truss rods most of the time. But in this case, I don't think we have a truss rod. Anyway, I'm still just putting this slightly off center and driving it in just about 1/8 of an inch. Then you take your cutters, and your cutters have a little V groove in them right there. And you lay them flat down on this, and that little V groove is just enough to leave a little indention. It just leaves a sharp spike right there, just a little tiny sharp spike, but that's all you need. And lay them flat on there, chop it off, you got that little spike there. Now, most of the time you do, see, like it's rocking on those two spikes now. So I've got it lined up really good, and what I'll do is take my plastic hammer, tap it one good tap right here, and then I'll tap it one good tap right back here at the back. I'll have two little marks where those little nails are. Actually, those nails, I think this wood's so soft, it almost drove them flush, but they're still catching, and so I don't think I really need to do anything further than that on these. That's catching, see, it won't slide now. I think that's all I'm going to do. Now we'll just put the new glue back on here. I think the glue will go on better this time too, because I think we got rid of most of that hide glue with the water. Yeah, sometimes it goes easy, sometimes not so easy.
Melodies, he played it from his heart for mine. Grandma and me, wrinkled old hands, he held it with love.
That's actually your best glue joint, is when you get real thin glue, but you get 100% coverage. Okay, now we're locked in, I believe. I don't think it's going to slide on me anymore. My goodness, never is easy. That's one thing I know for sure. It's never, ever simple. I'm going to pull that back just a hair so I can see that joint to make sure it's not moving.
And I can still hear it laying up in heaven above.
I think I'm just going to put a block here and let it pull the whole end of the fretboard down with the block. I think we're cooking with gas now. We had to go the long way around to do it, but that's better safe than sorry, you know. I don't like doing something halfway. I mean, if it didn't feel like it was wanting to move, that's one thing, but I could tell it was not wanting to stay still. And the tighter you clamp it when it wants to move, the worse it moves, and that's the truth. I know that sounds silly, but it's true.
Just a boy at the time, I remember a day when Grandpa had that old fiddle some old time.
I don't think it's moving this time. I think we're good. We'll see you in the morning. Well, I thought I had the camera turned on. I just took the clamps off. It's the next morning. Anyway, it looks like it turned out just fine, and we will move on from there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of detail work on this thing. I've got my Timbermate filler here. Now this is a white filler. I know they make it in dark colors and all that, but I just typically use the white and then just dye it with dye. That way I only have to keep one of these cans in stock instead of dozens of cans. What I've done is take a popsicle stick and I grind a thin blade on the end of it there. It's just really thin, goes down to a feather edge, and that lets you get right up into the cracks and push this stuff in. That's what it looks like before you clean it up there. You just take that and work it right down in that crack, and you just keep working it until you get it all crammed in there really good. Then you can just take a towel and just wipe it right off. There it is right there, and once you stain that, you'll never see it. It just makes it look airtight that way. It doesn't take very much of this at all. And I just put the extra back in the jar, close the jar up, wipe this thing off. That's what that side looks like. Give that, a couple hours to just get good and dry before I stain it there. It really doesn't take very long for it to dry, but I'll just give it a while, and then we'll touch it up, and we should be ready for the setup phase here. Well, my friends, weeks have passed. I have been one busy guy, and just literally weeks, and even months possibly. So I'm getting back on this mandolin to try to finish it up. All it really needs at this point is a little setup and a new bridge probably. I'm not even sure it'll need a new bridge, but it probably will. I'm also knocking down the ends of these frets. They're all sticking out quite a bit.
He did play. Well, now Grandpa, he has left us for heaven above, but he left me that old fiddle, and now I play it with love. Grandpa's old fiddle played sweet.
These frets have been filed a lot, it looks like, and so it won't be long it's going to need new frets, but they're still usable as they are. My preference is to have the lower frets anyway, because it just makes the strings lower to the fretboard, and I prefer it that way. I'm rocking this fret tool a little bit to try to knock off these sharp flat edges, because like I said, these frets have been filed quite a bit over the years, you can tell.
He played it from his heart for my grandma and me. Wrinkled old hands, he held it with love, and I can still...
So I'm going to get some 600 sandpaper here. Well, actually, this is some 800. That'll be just fine. So what I'll do is I'll actually sand the ends of these. This rounds them over faster than anything else. You can do all kinds of other techniques, but this sandpaper really rounds them off quickly. Just Just got to be careful up here that we don't scratch it. Holding it carefully.
Hear it playing up in heaven above. The old fiddle is ringing up in heaven above.
And now I'm just going to do this. And again, I go this way for 2 reasons. Well, 3 or 4 reasons. Number 1, it's much faster. Number 2, it rounds the frets off much quicker. And it actually rounds them off better this way than it does the other way. But number 3, and probably the most important reason, is I don't stand much chance of lowering one particular fret lower than the rest of them. If you get one fret just even 1/1000th of an inch lower than the rest, that can actually cause a buzz. So if you do it like this, then you're keeping all your frets level within the relative area. And that's very important in my opinion. Plus, this is the quickest way to do it. It shines the frets up much faster. The frets almost look like brand new when you're done this way, when you do it this way. Now, granted, the fretboard itself gets messed up, but I have a method for fixing that, and it's a method that you kind of need to do anyway on most fretboards, especially old fretboards. And I'll show you that in a moment. But take a look how shiny those frets are. See, they're really shiny already. They almost look like a mirror. Now, you can, of course, go more and make them look like a mirror with the semi-chrome polish or something else. But I don't feel like we need to go that far with this. But that does get the frets up in really nice shape. Gets rid of a lot of those sharp edges and corners and things. Now I'll show you that next technique. Okay, so this technique just is the single edge razor blade, and we scrape the fretboard in between the frets. This gets rid of the finger grooves and other scratches and things. So you can see there with the light cleaning, you can see how there's a little bit of a finger groove right there. Fingernail groove, that's what that is from fingernails. And it's very shallow. It looks deeper than it is, but most of that's going to come out here if I just keep cleaning this up. Sometimes you won't get it all, depending on how deep the groove is. And it even scrapes the pearl down smooth too if you do it right. I think you can see the difference there between the ones that have been scraped and the ones that have not. Makes them look much nicer. Now the thing is, you got to go next to each fret and scrape all the junk that builds up right next to the fret. Does a nice job. Now we'll just take some Be Good oil and we'll put a little bit of this. You can find this on the products I use page, I think, of my website. I think you can. Maybe not. This stuff was, I think, maybe only obtained from Kling Sport, but it may be on my products I use. I can't remember if I ever found it on Amazon or not. Then we just take and we wipe this back off after we get it on there. I'm going to try cleaning up around these edges here. There's a lot of old, just old kind of damage around here. I'm going to get some dye and see if we can't touch this up, and then we'll do some other techniques. I got some Phoebing's dark brown leather dye, and I'm just going to put it on these places that have been scuffed or scratched, or where the finish is off of there a little bit, and just lightly apply it and wipe it back off. this whole area here is kind of scuffed up pretty bad. And right along the neck there, where we took the fretboard off, you can see a little scar there. You know, you pretty much always see that. So you gotta, this just cleans that up or you won't really notice it. What we'll do that I think will make it look even better is we'll take some boiled linseed oil and just wipe down the whole finish with that. You know, one of these small things of boiled linseed oil will last you a lifetime. You look how rusty the can is here on top. It's really, you know, past its prime in one sense, but the stuff still seems to be perfectly good to use. It just lasts forever. All right, so I'm just going to put, you know, a liberal amount here on this rag like this, and then just start wiping the whole body down with this. And it does two things. It's good for the places wherever the finishes come off. It'll help kind of seal the wood up a little bit, but it also works like a cleaner too. When you rub it around like this, you'll be surprised. A lot of dirt will come off. It's amazing how much dirt will come off with this stuff. And you know, it doesn't hurt. You can just rub it on there, and then these old finishes, I recommend that you do rub them down with boiled linseed oil every once in a while. And the thing about it is, after you get it rubbed down and, you know, rub it in pretty good like I'm doing here, as you can see, makes them look like $1 million. Just keep rubbing it in like with the oil side down here, and rub it, you know, quite a bit. Then, once you feel like you've got it rubbed in pretty good, take a clean towel and just wipe it off. If you do that enough times, you'll actually put a new finish on the instrument. But, you know, that's not my intent here. It's just to clean it up and make it look a little better. That's all we're trying to do today. So now I'm going to move on to a different section, maybe the sides. I'll just wipe the sides down with it. It even makes the little nicks and things kind of almost disappear. Okay, now I forgot to dye the areas down in here where I put that fill, so let me do that. Here's how I do that. I just shake the bottle, get it up on the lid, then I just use the lid because this stuff runs everywhere. You get more than you need by just getting it on the lid. But I'll do half of this and then I'll show you. So you can see the upper half that I've touched up, and then like I'll even touch up little spots like that where you can kind of see a little light spot, and then you just wipe it off, you know, and looks so much better. So we'll just put some more down through here, make this white go away. That we put that in there as a filler, but you won't be able to see it at all. And then we'll just wipe it down like that. And then I'll take the oil and I'll wipe the neck down with the oil too. Again, it acts like a cleaner. It really does. Cleans it up, makes it look nice. And then we'll stain this side too while we're at it. Now I just noticed just now there's a little bit of glue that has squeezed out right in here when we put the fretboard back on. So we'll just get rid of that. Just do a light touch right there where that glue was. Makes it go away. Very nice. I'm not going to mess with this up here, mostly because of all this plastic and stuff that's just kind of a mess, really. I just don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go ahead and just wipe the linseed oil on top of the fretboard too. It doesn't hurt anything. You know, the Be Good oil and the linseed oil, they're complementary. They're not going to hurt one another. All right, I think that's about all we need to do for the cosmetics. Now we'll get back to the setup business. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about this brand of string, this Musel, but I found them on the internet, and I like it because they're very light gauge. These go from 10 to 32, and on an old mandolin and this style mandolin, light strings are typically better. So they're 10 to 32, which is very light actually, because mine are usually 11 to 40 is what I typically use. And so this would be a lot better, real light, but the best thing about them is that they are phosphor bronze. And it says they're handmade, so I don't know, you know, whether, I don't even know what country they're made in, but by the packaging, they look like they would be good stuff. I'm sure you could Google it if you want to find that out. In case you're wondering, phosphor bronze overall is about as good as you can do on just about any kind of string. Now, not necessarily on a banjo, but otherwise, on most stringed instruments, phosphor bronze is pretty good. Mandolins, guitars, things like that. Yeah, it's going to be too low, I can tell. But that's all right. I just need to get an idea how too low it is, and then I can figure out how much I'm going to have to build it up. It's basically sitting flat on there right now with that bridge, which is kind of what I wanted. I kind of wanted to put a new bridge on this and make it taller, because it just needed some, you know, some pressure down on the top and everything to make it play well. And we're going to have to raise this up quite a bit, obviously. It's pretty much rubbing the whole way. I'm just going to look down it and see if I can. In fact, not only is it rubbing, it's bent down right here, so it's actually going down to this. So we got to go quite a ways up. I'm not even sure where to start, so I guess I'm going to try some test pieces. That's getting close. It's not quite as high as it's going to need to be yet. That looks pretty close right there. And let me try this piece on this other side. It's still not tall enough for that side, I don't think. Getting close. It's going to have to be taller than that, I think. At least I can get a measurement off this, and then I can go from there and just do a guesstimate about how much taller it needs to be. But I'm just going to mark this right here so I know where I've got it set in here, and then I can measure it with a caliper and decide how thick that is and decide how much thicker I want to make it. On the treble side, okay, I'm going to call that about 315, and on the bass side we're at 363, or we'll just call it 365. So what I'm going to probably do is cut something about 400 thousandths thick, just to get me going, and then I'll make it look like this. So I'm going to get started doing that. I found this piece of scrap ebony. I'm also going to make it longer than this original, or this other bridge, just a little bit. Making it longer helps spread out the sound, also helps spread out the stress on the top so that it's not pushing down in one specific spot. So this piece should work just fine. It's quite a bit thicker than I need this way, but that won't be no problem. So I'm going to go cut this off and shape it up a little bit. Well, there you can see I've got a piece of stock to work with there, and I think I'll take it over to the mandolin and just make sure it looks like it's going to be the right size. Okay, well, I just made 2 cuts on that piece of rough stock ebony there, and so I thought I'd bring it back over here and just make sure that it looks like it's going to be the right size here. Yeah, we'll have plenty of height. It's going to be fine. Okay, now I'm going to thin this piece down because it's way too thick. And, you know, I'm going to leave it a little bit thicker than this piece, but not by much. And then we'll go to the thickness sander and take it down a little bit more. Okay, we're moving over to the thickness sander. This is my favorite tool in the shop. It was originally designed by one of my father's friends who was a machinist. In fact, he was the shop teacher at a school, and he used this as a class project to build this for me. And he came up with the original design. Now, this particular one I made from scratch myself, but I based it on his original design. The original one, I gave it to my friend Ron McClanahan, and Ron was the guy that was making those saddles for me for quite a long time. And he used it to make those saddles. You know, I didn't need two of them anyway, and this one's just a little bigger than the original one, and I like the bigger one just a little bit better. We're gonna run this through there and sand this down smooth. Now the sandpaper's getting old and worn here, so I'll just have to find a spot on here that I can use. Clean the sandpaper first. Okay, the original one is about 213 thousandths wide. Let's see how wide this one is. 243, so we're about 30 thousandths thicker. And you know what? I think I'm okay with that. Now we'll start shaping it to make it look like a bridge. Did a little bit of work of this off camera. I cleaned the bottom side of it up and left a slight, very, very, very slight concave section in there, which matches the top pretty darn close. Now I can't say it's perfect yet, but before we go any further, I'm going to put some sandpaper in here and try and move this back and forth until we get it pretty close to perfect. This 220 sandpaper, this is the advanced formula, no slip, lasts longer. This is the pro model, if you will, of the 3M sandpaper. This is the stuff I'm always raving about. You can find it on the products I use. This has been used, by the way, quite a few times for this exact purpose. So you can see that there's no buildup or anything. You can just wipe it on the carpet and clean it right off. And then I'm just going to slide this like this. I like the string pressure on this, and I like to go this way, not this way, because when you go this way, you rock the darn thing and you round the edges off. This way keeps it perfectly flat to the top, and as long as you don't move it very far, makes it contour to the top really well. See, it's almost touching all the way across. It's got a little bit of a high spot there in the middle. But see, I created that high spot on purpose because I was trying to get it to conform to this top better. I'll just show you that this cleans up really well. It may not clean it up 100% when you're talking about the black, but see, you can see it's almost completely gone. A little bit more rubbing and it probably would be gone. So that sandpaper is awesome. So now we'll shape it more like this bridge was shaped. Okay, so I have it marked on here, bass and treble. I know which way it goes. And I have this marked, I can tell which way the bass was on this also, so because of the string sizes. But anyway, I'm going to lay it on here toward the top and just kind of pencil in about, the marks where they go. Just draw it in the way I think it should look. I'll probably take and knock it down a little bit with the bandsaw first, but then I'll just take it over to the sander and just kind of run it into the sander, my thickness sander, and just, curve off these ends, kind of like these were curved off. It'll make it look real nice. Okay, now this tool is so versatile, I'm going to use it to, sand off the ends of these, both ends of this bridge. So here we go. Well, that looks real good. Makes the ends match real well. The only thing I'm not sure of is if the length of this is the same. So I'm going to measure the length and I'll adjust that if I have to here. Okay, now that I've got this roughly shaped, I'm going to round off the top to kind of a narrow area there. That's kind of the way this one was made. And I'll probably do that with my little finger planes. This is the smallest finger plane I have. I'm not sure it's the best one for this, but we'll give it a shot and see. It might be. Seems to be working good. The only problem I'm having is holding this, and I'm sure there's better ways to hold this, but I'm trying to hold it for the camera mostly. And this is really hurting my hands. It's really hurting my hands a lot. So I may have to go to a mechanical way to shape this versus the finger plane. I would prefer to shape it with the finger plane because it's so much more precise. I just like to use the finger planes when I can. In days gone by, this would have been a 2-minute job here. But right now, there's just too much pain in both hands, actually, and trying to hold it and trying to cut this. It's looking pretty good. But I think I'm just going to go over to a sander and make it on the sander because I just can't control the planes well enough right now. Well, I think I can do this on the sander, but I'm not really sure. I'd much prefer to do it on my little finger planes, but you got to do what you got to do. Well, that's pretty good, but I kind of wish I could have done it with the finger planes. This is probably just as good, but you can't tell as well. This is cut down in here a little further than I wished it would have on that side, so I just tried to make the rest of it look that way. It's fine. It's going to be no problem. Nobody's going to get down and look at it that close. Okay, well, I think the sander idea worked pretty well. It's not 100%, but it's decent. I'm just going to try to clean it up a little bit here with the file. Let me clean this mess up a little bit and we'll show you what it looks like on the mandolin. Well, there's what she looks like just sitting there in place, looking pretty darn good. A little bit high maybe, but not terribly high. Now we're going to need to, get the rest of the strings on here and get the notches set and all that good stuff. I'm going to just do the notches by eye because I sold my equipment to Caleb. So I don't have it anymore, and I'll just do it by eye. I'm sure I can do that. Been doing it long enough, I ought to know where it goes by now. And I'm just going to put 2 little fine marks there where those 2 strings go. Holding it again is the problem. I could get out the vise, but then you couldn't see what I'm doing, so you may not be able to see it anyway. Now we'll put that back in place and just make sure I'm happy with that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Quite honestly, I didn't get it centered this way. I don't know what I was looking at, but I think what I can do, I was a little narrow anyway, so I think what I'll do is just cut another groove on this side for the treble. That's what I'll do, and it'll even it out. Yeah, that's much better. That looks real good, and this width here is even a little bit better too. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. All right, so now I'm going to get the other strings on here and just set them in place and file the grooves as I put them on. I'm pretty good with that. I think that looks pretty fine to me. You know, you can spend all day on stuff like this and not really gain much, and that really isn't too bad to just do it by eye. Now, it's still a little high. We still could adjust it if we need to. I think I'm going to go ahead and tune it up and see where we're at and, you know, make some adjustments. So let me do some tuning and things, and then I'll show you where we're at. Well, this mandolin has been sitting for a couple of days now, strung up, and everything's pretty good, but there's a little bit of buzziness going on right in here. There's kind of a hump in this area, and I'm going to just take the 2 treble strings off and file through this area right here, and I think that's going to fix the buzzes that I'm hearing. So here we go. Pull the strings out of the way. You don't even have to necessarily take them off. I may have to, but we'll see. Boy, these are really tiny little tuning keys. I don't know if you've noticed that, but these are little bitty things. I don't know that I've ever seen any smaller, and I didn't even really realize that till just now. But see, I can just hold them down there out of the way and level through this area right here. And it's a little bit rocky. You can see it's rocking a little bit right there. So there's a high spot right in here, and that's causing the buzzing. I know some people, you know, would frown on this technique, thinking that this isn't going to work, but trust me, I've been doing this for 40 some years, and I guarantee you this works. I've done it gazillions of times. You know, people have all kinds of misnomers and misunderstandings about fret leveling, and as I've said many times before, your frets have to be level relative to the frets near them. That's what they have to be. Not so much level from this fret to this fret. It's level in this general area, so when you press a fret, it doesn't buzz here. And when you press a fret here, it doesn't buzz here. It's got to be level in the, I mean, you know, if it's perfectly level all the way, that's fine. And these are very close to that. I don't want to misinform anyone. There's almost no difference between this one and this one. But when you do have a high spot like that in the middle or in a hump area, you can just clean up that area and feather it out, and you'll be just fine. There's just a few frets right here that were getting filed during that time, so there's not that much filing going on here. Now what I'll do is I'll use a little different technique because of, you know, doing such a specific area. I'll just take a little bit of this sandpaper here. This is 800, and I'll use one of these little covers. It's hard to do it on these mandolin frets because the frets are so close together. It's really hard to use these covers. To keep from making a big mess here, I'll just do this. Alright, so now I'll just get a brush and clean that off a little bit. We'll get her strung back up and I'll show you what it sounds like. Well, my friends, we've got this mandolin up in pretty darn good shape. I don't think there's any more real buzzes or anything. The action is pretty low, so the folks should be happy to play the thing. It's pretty easy to play. In case you're still wondering what it is, it's a Leonora. It was made by, or at least it was sold by Illinois Musical Supply Company, South Wabash Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. So, it's a Leonora. It seems like I've seen that name once or twice before in my career, but it's got the most unique tuning keys on it of just about any mandolin I've ever seen. It's a pretty nice little mandolin. It's got a decent little sound. You know, this is the last commercial instrument that I, at least as of right now, that I plan to work on. In other words, this was a paid job. This was a, not a close friend or relative. This was just someone that asked me to work on their instrument. Now, this came in many months ago, and I told him it would be a while before I got it finished. I think we're finishing it just about on the time scale that I expected to finish it on. But now that this is the last commercial job, I just thought I would sing a song which just happens to be the very first song that I believe I ever wrote. And it's about bluegrass, of course. I started out to write this song about my Uncle Don Brown, who was considered to be the father of bluegrass music in Missouri. But I switched it and just wrote it about the father of bluegrass himself, and Bill Monroe was his name. So it goes like this. Bill Monroe is the father of bluegrass. He's the one that gave us all this joy. He picked up an old Gibson mandolin and he formed a band called the Bluegrass Boys. He's known far and wide for his picking, and we've all tried to copy his style. Well, now for those of you who'd like to hear it, here's old JR to give it a try. Well, old Bill is really getting up there, but his music's as fresh as can be. Someday he'll pick up in heaven, then we'll all hear that mandolin ring. So next time you're out in the evening, look and see if that old moon is blue. If it is, you'll know Bill is happy, 'cause he'll be picking some old bluegrass tune. Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass. I think that's fitting into a long 40-year career building and repairing musical instruments, and 10 of those years here on YouTube. I hope I've done something that you've enjoyed over the years. There are well over 1,000 videos on building and repairing musical instruments, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 1,500, I believe. And I hope you will stay with me and watch my future videos, which were going to be more directed towards farm chores and things like that, and farm projects, just like the water wheel I'm building, and some of the pond work I've been doing, things like that. And I hope you'll stick with me and find a way to enjoy those videos in the future as I transition into the next chapter of my life. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support over the years. And we'll see you on the next video.